Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Webinar Talk Show. My name is Tom Singer.
And I'm Liz Green. And Tom, we're almost done with our second season. Can you believe it?
You know, we started this show when the whole COVID pandemic first began because we realized that so many people were doing webinars and so many of them were just falling flat. And we knew that this whole concept of doing a webinar, it didn't have to be long and boring. It could be more than a talking head over PowerPoint, and they didn't have to be an hour or longer. That we could do short, informative interviews and really get people some powerful content. And I can't believe that it's the end of the year.
Now, we still have next week, so don't worry. We still have 2 more episodes tomorrow, or next week. And I think this really goes to one of your tips, Tom, about talk to a smart person every day. So every Monday and Wednesday, we get to talk to at least one, sometimes 2 smart people to start off our day. And that's been very fun. We have a very smart person today.
Yes, we do. In fact, I'm really, really excited because we have with us today a good friend of both of ours, Stacey Hanke. And she isn't just a speaker. She does corporate training and real specific work with CEOs and senior leaders around their influence and, sort of how they can influence others. And what she talks about is so important. And I think it's more important today in this digital world that we live in. So Stacey, like I said, she helps leaders increase their awareness of how much influence they have, not just what they think they have. And she's the author of a very successful book called Influence Redefined: Be the Leader You Were Meant to Be from Monday to Monday, which that's every single day. So Stacey Hanke, welcome to the Webinar Talk Show.
Oh, I love doing this. Oh, exactly. Like you said, Tom, I feel like this is old school right now in a good way, because you and I and Liz, we've known each other, I don't know how long. I don't even want to do the calculation, but it's been long. Exactly. It's been a long time. So thank you. Thanks for trusting me in this platform and with your followers. I told you earlier, I've been watching you guys from afar and love what you're doing. So it's an honor. It's an honor to be able to sit here today with you.
Well, we're really, really glad to be here with you. So I want to jump in. Let's talk about influence for business professionals in the world of digital, virtual, work from home, etc. What's changed in the last 9 months?
It's exactly that, right? I was telling a client the other day, I go, the good news now is all you have to do to build your executive presence and build your personal brand, you just have to work in this box. The bad news, you just have to work in this box. Right? The biggest, I'll go off of what I hear everyone out there saying to me. At this point, 9 months into the situation, I hear a lot of the challenges are, I'm missing that social interaction of my hallway conversations, of the water cooler conversations. And the 3 of us know that's where so much of the relationship has gotten built. To me, that's probably the biggest change, because when you look at how you behave in person to how you can behave here, there's so much that transfers over. The piece you do have to be creative with is that water cooler conversation. Those conversations over lunch or coffee that really are so critical because they take that relationship to the next step.
Right. So are we being challenged in different ways, or are our challenges being amplified because we are in this box?
I think you could answer it with both, right? I think it's definitely amplified. I tell every client that your level of influence, which we define it through your body language and your messaging, all of the strengths and challenges that you're experiencing today, sitting in this virtual environment, they were there pre-March. This small area that we're now working through and trying to influence through, it has magnified those strengths, those weaknesses. Here's the good news though. I think throughout the situation that we're sitting in right now, there's one thing that we've got control of right now in our life, and that's our development. To really look at this time as you may never get this time again. Wait a second, which I hope we don't, right?
Right.
Yeah. One global pandemic, that's enough for my lifetime.
Yes, one of my lifetime, exactly. But to really look at this as, if you can learn to still connect, engage, build that presence with whomever you're trying to influence, if you can do it here, I really believe when we are more back in person, whatever that looks like, how strong you're going to be from pre-March. It's just taking a closer look at and analyzing, how do I behave in person? How can I recreate that here? Because you don't want inconsistency. You don't want people remembering you a certain way these 9 months plus virtually, and then when they do get a chance to meet in person and they're starting to guess, but you're like totally different. This is like really odd. And I think that's where we really start jeopardizing and messing with our influence, when the consistency is not there.
So isn't that something that people would have struggled with before the pandemic? I mean, consistency and how they influence. I mean, I've seen people have struggles with that in person.
All the time, exactly. And that's where, if it was already there, not if, it was there pre-March. And now our clients are coming to us and saying, wow, this is me just looking at a camera. Now I don't have the people in front of me to read them, which I still believe you can. There's just different ways that, going back to your earlier question, Liz, you're adapting to it. It's blowing things up, Tom. It's magnifying what we didn't realize, how much work we needed. I'll give you an example. Some of our clients will say, Zoom fatigue, right? And a part of me disagrees with that. I don't think it's Zoom fatigue. I think it's ineffective meetings. I think it's ineffective deliveries. Because think about pre-March, how many sales pitches you might have sat through in a day, or training sessions you sat through the day. It wasn't the number of them that ever wore you out. It was individually which ones wore you out. And it's that piece of really saying, when we first started in March, I was very more forgiving with what would sometimes show up when they would turn their camera on. But now, you're thinking, you're 9 months into this. Your brand is still on everything you do. This is still work. And those that get it are extremely noticeable in a positive way virtually, versus those that haven't put in an effort yet and are just waiting for this to go away, which this is to enhance not just this environment, but every interaction that you're doing.
Well, I think I just had an experience last night, and I actually texted Tom about it. I am taking a class to develop something outside my speaking world, in the sailing world. And I'm going to guess that the weakness of reading PowerPoint slides was there before the pandemic. It is absolutely amplified by being like, it's so painful. And I think, going back to your point, is that our expectations of what is being presented to us now 9 months into the pandemic, when we know it can be better, it's like, why don't we have video? Does it have to be a little drawing? No, we could have video.
He's like, let me draw out my quick PowerPoint slide, and I'm going to try to figure out where the camera is, and I'll show it to you. It's taking your time. And one thing, let me take a step back. One thing that my team and I did at the very beginning, after we got done panicking and trying to figure out what are we going to do, like everyone else in our industry probably went through, is we really took a step back and we just did a brainstorm, loaded up a piece of paper on how do we interact in person, and what are we known for? What do our clients say about us? Where do they get the value? Where do we get the return on investment? And we laid it out. And then we took a step back and we said, okay, how can we recreate that in the virtual environment? And we can do all of it. You can recreate all of it. Sure, are you adapting? It's similar to when you're in a boardroom having a conversation versus when you're on a stage trying to influence through a conversation. Same core skills, you're just adapting it because the environment's a little different. But that might be a thought for anyone that is still struggling with, how do I read people? How do I interact? How do I connect? How do I engage? There's so many different levels here because you can't see everyone necessarily always sitting in front of you, especially if they don't have their cameras on all the time. But really just reflect back, because that's where, Tom, that consistency comes into play. Where I would think your listeners right now would want to know that however they're behaving on this virtual platform, people can say to them, wow, it's wild. I don't know what you're doing. I feel like I'm at an event with you. And when I heard that, after us trying to put together our virtual platform, I realized, okay, I think we've got something here. I think we've figured it out to some degree. Not that we're not We're still trying to figure this out every day. I'll be the first to admit that. But you just start to hear comments where people will say, I had one last week and I've been working with them for a long time. I haven't seen them in a while this year. And we did this virtual and I really had to convince them. I had to convince them that, trust me, we can provide the same value here. So they did. And about midway through, we took a break and she looks at me and says, it's like you're here. We're not sure what you're doing, but it's like you're here. So I think we just all need to take a look at what is that for us.
So Stacey, I want to talk about like the training that you do, because unlike a lot of Eliz's and my speaker friends, you have actually gone beyond just the keynote speaking, and you've developed a whole company where you do training programs for director through C-suite and also a lot of sales teams on this whole idea of communication and influence. Are you seeing companies pull back and say, well, we're not going to do any training, because of this Zoom type situation? Or are you seeing companies say, we're all in, let's take advantage of it? What's the trend?
Yeah. God, Tom, I've learned so much, like all of you, have learned so much in 9 months. If there's one big silver lining, I just personally, you probably both feel the same way. I am stronger now than I was in March. And I never thought I would say that in March. Just trying to figure it out. And initially, I would say March through April, part of May, our clients were completely on hold. And a lot of it was not knowing. They had no idea. They were very hopeful. They were going to go back in the summer. Then they were going to go back in the fall. There was so much questioning. The other big question, and this is part of influence that we had to take on, is I constantly hear my clients say, we've never seen you virtually. We only know you as your team in person. And now you got to re-educate, right? And now I had to convince that. I would say right around the June timeframe, when we knew more, suddenly clients were knocking on the door. And at this point, we've just been fortunate because they're saying, at that point when they knew this year, we're not going back this year. And then my influence was, what are you going to do? I mean, you've got to keep these people's head in the game. You've got to keep them motivated. And influence still happens. Training still happens. Now, Tom, they are booking well into, a lot of them are booking into at least May. And now it's that June. You probably have heard that too from some of your clients. It's this magical June 1st, which we don't know what that means. The majority of our clients, Tom, are booking now. And I think a lot of it's that. Now we have a backing though too. We've created momentum, just like our speaker friends. At this point, if you've been out there, you're created momentum, and we can use those as referrals, video testimonials, and clients will say, all right, I've got what I need, I trust you. Now, in addition to that though, I'd lie to you if I told you that just magically happened. It's been lots and lots of phone calls, tons of phone calls. Every day we pound the pavement, more than we've ever had. And then we decided to do a complimentary. I thought, I've got to show them. This is a product I need to show them. So we do 90-minute, we haven't lately, but initially we would do a 90-minute, and we would say it's a 90-minute complimentary. In my mind, that's a sales pitch, so very long sales pitch. And I would say up to 6 of your leaders, they all have to be in decision-making positions, and I'm going to give them a taste test of what their teams. And that really works. So if I'm throwing just ideas out there, if it helps for some of you out there, steal it, borrow it. But to me, it was so much about influence is trust. And creating trust not only here, it was really even through the conversations and the many Zoom calls. We did no phone calls. I never got on a phone with anyone. We had to do it Zoom. And I really believe that without Zoom, I'm not sure I could have sold in a pandemic. I'm not convinced I could have done it with the camera on, right?
I've been telling everybody that what if this pandemic had come in 1997? We wouldn't have been able to do any of the business that we're doing. We now have these technology tools like our phones and Zoom and everything else. So we're fortunate that it happened now versus 15, 20 years ago. But I've found sort of the same thing. So my business was more of a traditional keynote speaker and master of ceremonies for live events. That was probably 85 or 90% of the work that I did. And I have started doing more training for professional services firms like law firms and accounting firms and engineering firms. And much to what you just said, I'm seeing the same thing. They didn't do anything until the summer. And all of a sudden they're like,
Okay.
we probably should be doing something. And they're trying to embrace bringing, professional development to their employees. And I think that's
Right.
going to continue a lot into the first half of next year.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so, right? But yeah, we're seeing the trend too that it's going to be a heavy Q1. The other thing about we learn as we go, right? And if I look at what else has been the big benefit of this, like whether you like this platform or not, it's here and it's what we have, and you get the choice of what are you going to do with it, how are you going to make it the best that it possibly can be. With all these Zoom calls, some of our clients that I've known for 10 years, I really didn't know them. And because I see them now so often here, it's this friendship that is so, so cool because, the three of us and everyone else out there, we can't be out there doing what we love and being around people. Like this is my go-to is I'll pack my day with Zoom calls, sometimes selfishly, because I just want to see people. And I want some friends and create those relationships. So that's a big part of it. It's also, I think, companies, associations that are just going to wait. And if they're not training their people in this platform or just bringing them all together, there's too many stats out there now that are talking about loneliness and lack of creativity and people really struggling. And I hear that a lot. That's sometimes those hard calls that maybe the two of you also experience with your clients. Within a week, how many people I talk to that will tell me how they're struggling and how their teams are really struggling. So how can we help them even in a personal level with, the conversation will go not only influencing professionally, we get asked a lot, how do you influence here when you've got animals over here and struggling, Zoom's not connecting over here for that. So there's so much more to it, I think. And that's probably what goes back to our first, where we started this conversation, what makes this so complicated, so hard, but not impossible.
I think two things. First, I think you're absolutely right. I have a different conversation with clients, particularly new potential clients, because I'm being invited into their living room or their kitchen or their home office, and it's a different relationship that you're building. It's much more personal, I think, than it has happened in the past. But I had a conversation with a potential client yesterday, which leads me to ask this question.
Okay.
They are planning, now reinventing their annual sales conference, which now is going to be 100% virtual because it has to be. It is not what they've done in the past. There's a lot of discomfort, and she is having to sell up, influence up to get her immediate supervisor on board with the idea of, well, one of the things is, working with Tom and me, but also what can we do? What can we replicate that we normally do in person in this virtual environment, and kind of going outside the box a little bit? What advice do you have for somebody trying to influence that direction?
Is the question influencing up, or the role that you and Tom can take, or both?
Influencing up was my original question, but if you want to talk about Tom and me, you're always welcome.
You guys are pros, you know this. But influencing up, it's all going to be about trust. And I think you have to have proof of what happens if we don't do this, and what's the benefits when we do this. And don't put a spotlight on this one. When you start talking about the benefits, really emphasize what's in it for that leader. If that leader's name, face, brand is going to be on this event, we need to first tackle that personal piece. Going a little deeper there, I found with a lot of my clients, I don't know what's going on in their personal life. I don't know what's going on in their professional life. And sometimes, like all of us, you'll get these conversations going, and I'm realizing that's not what I came to this call. I had no idea I was going to deal with this, but I need to communicate with empathy right now. And that's why putting that person, really emphasizing the benefits of the person whose name is going to be on this, who's in that decision-making role, they need to feel that this really is the right choice. This is the better choice than not doing it at all. And I think a lot of that's going to be through the benefits that you put on it. I think benefits tie to trust. And that's hard to do, but just really, really focus on what happens if we don't do this, but here's what happens when we do.
Mm-hmm. That's smart.
And then for Tom and you or any of us out there that are the ones that someone's bringing in for an event, we have to prove it. That's our job. We just have to prove that. And even if it's here, you know, sometimes if I'm doing a sales pitch, I'll just say to them, do you want to see a quick clip? And I'll just physically do it. I'll do it right here. And I'll walk them through how it would work in their platform or my platform, just so they can get a little bit of a taste test and realize you're in the education role. We've heard that from a lot of our professional speaker network that's out there. I hear everyone talking about it. It's our job to educate. So we're not even just selling anymore. Now we're educating to build the trust to meet that sale.
So Stacey, before we got started, we were talking about the fact, and you touched on this a little bit earlier, that now is the time to develop these professional skills, whether it's communication and influence or any of the skills that any of, you know, our speaker and trainer friends teach, that now is the time for companies to do that. And yet some people are making excuses. We talked a little bit about companies that, you know, are saying, yes, now is the time, but there's still some people who are going, well, it's COVID. How do you deal with people who are throwing up roadblocks that now isn't the time to do professional development training?
Yeah. One of the questions I will always ask my client or potential client, I'll say, talk me through the fear. What's the fear?
I like that.
I've written that down.
I stole that from someone else. I don't remember who I stole it from. Otherwise, I would share that. So I can't take the credit for that one. But I heard that early on in this process. And I thought, God, you imagine how much you get out of that answer. So what I realized when they do the fear, so I'm just really listening and I'm writing like a crazy woman as much as I can capture to help me understand, okay, that's important, that's not important, here's what needs to be done. After you ask, what's the fear? What would be the biggest win for you? What result? What do you want these people to do? What does this look like for you on the other side? And then in the midst of that, now I know David Newman does this a lot as well. So I'm going to do a shout out for him here. He also talks a lot of the numbers. If I'm working with sales, I want to find out, so how much are they supposed to sell in a quarter? What's that number right now look like? And from those numbers, I start to share with them, well, if we do the training, and this is what the training costs, yet this is what you want them to sell, isn't it worth it? Because my training cost is going to be less than what you want them to sell. Right. So you got to, I think from a standpoint of sales right now, you really got to understand numbers. Really start asking the questions of what's this value to them? Not so much just what someone can do as a result of your speech, your training, your mentoring. Start talking dollars, because that's probably why they're fearing in the first place. They don't want to spend the money.
My brain was just sort of digesting that. That's really a very nice flow, and I think as speakers we've often had the conversation where somebody has had a terrible experience with something, and they're pushing back, and you're like, where is this coming from? And then if you ask enough questions and find out what that fear is, oftentimes it's like, oh, no, we're not going to do that. You know, it's going to be fine. And here are the things that we can put in place to make you feel more comfortable. And isn't that kind of where we should be?
And Liz, be as specific as you can with it, because I've also seen this backfire if you find out what the fear is and you're speaking to them all this fluffy stuff, all this really nice stuff. That doesn't work now, especially now. You have to be very specific on what is the outcome. What can you do to make sure that fear isn't there and that they are getting that dollar amount, that return on investment, that value. Do your homework, right?
So Stacey, as we wrap this up, if someone's watching this and they're either a meeting planner and they work in the meetings industry, planning a convention or a conference, or they do training for a company and they're planning that sales meeting or some sort of professional development meeting, Eliz is in my theme for the second season of this webinar talk show has been, don't cancel your event.
Yes.
What advice do you have for that person who's planning a conference or training to remind them that now is the time to have an event?
Besides, good luck with that. No. No. Oh, I have a lot. I'm going to categorize it instead of giving you too much. I'm going to speak from what I hear my clients say. I've not had a single client say to me, so wish we did not do that. Even though there were technical difficulties there, the fact that we kept our people's head in the game. So when you are wavering and you're trying to negotiate with yourself on whether or not you're going to do it, first, it's all about your people. And to really prove to them that you're still willing to invest in them. I think that is so critical, because you want to keep them, right? For the most part, you want to keep them through this. You want to keep them through this pandemic to continue to grow. The second is, this isn't going away. I don't think it's going away. Now, do I think there's a lot of hybrid? And we've heard a lot of our peers talk about that. It's the fear now that you're having. So take a step back and get comfortable being uncomfortable. The true metric to success is discomfort. You just have to get one underneath your belt, because this same fear that you're maybe debating about virtual or not virtual event, you probably had that the very first time you had to do a live event. Because it's the unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. Get one underneath your belt, iron out the challenges. The other thing is, and this is kind of more high level, but it's such a bigger reach. Probably for both of you too, with some of the events that you've done. The huge silver lining is so many of my events were only supposed to be a regional event, or they were going to be a national event. Every one of them was an international event. Think of the gift. That is such a gift, to be able to connect with every corner of the world. So cool. I think it's really opening up associations, even our corporate clients, to unite, like to create these networks and these cohorts, because you finally now have the capability to bring the entire association together globally. Every company that's also international, that's been happening a lot. I don't know, I get really excited about that. And I think a lot of it is because I'm such a people person, and I'm all about influence, and the fact that, wow, when if this would have ever really happened in our lifetime, that you can bring your entire company together. It's a pretty cool event. I've got a client today, actually, as we speak. We were working with them yesterday, leading up to today. They have a 24-hour event going on right now. Ooh. They're a global company. They're in practically every country in this world. And they just decided, we have no idea what we're doing, but we cannot get these people together. So why don't we just do a 24-hour event? I think people want it versus not want it.
And to what you just said, that is so right on. I spoke for an International Technology Association yesterday, and in their opening session, their CEO talked about the fact that their membership this year has grown more than any of the past 4 or 5 years. And one of the reasons for that is they've been providing online content, and people want access to it in their industry all over the world. So they actually have seen their membership numbers go up because they've taken this leap to do these digital, virtual, professional development training. So what you're saying, I just saw that yesterday.
It's fantastic.
It's so fun. It's just, it's neat. I think too, like the whole, when you get a chance to be with all these individuals from all over the world, and you really start talking about their life and what they're going through, and you're realizing, wow, we're all truly all in this together. We all want the same, very similar things. And I think it helps us, even as the deliverer, it just helps us too, emotionally, and to keep our head in the game.
Yep.
Very, very true. So, Stacey, I know there are people out there who have listened to you, and we said you were a very smart person at the beginning. You are a very smart person.
High standards.
So if they're like, I need to talk to Stacey about what I have planned, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, go to our website. We're big with video. There's so many complimentary resources on there for the last 9 months, and they're really just to help you. I want to be a resource from afar, even if I never get a chance to meet you. Just go to the website. It's Stacey with an EY, HANKEINC.com.
Perfect.
StaceyHankeyInc.com. We'll put that in some of the show notes and places that we post this.
We will.
And again, Thank you so much. It was so great to have this conversation with you. I'm kind of fired up.
Oh, good. Well, you guys make me fired up. So thank you. Thanks again. And as long as there's just nuggets that everyone can use, then it was worth their time.
Fantastic. As we mentioned at the top of the show, we'll be back next week with our final 2 episodes. We have Angelique Brewers on Monday, and then at a earlier time, we have a recap of CAPS, which is the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers event that is happening like right now. They're going to tell us how
it's actually happening, I think, today. That's right.
Right.
It's right as we broadcast this, it's happening. And next week they're going to recap everything they did to make their virtual event so unique and so powerful.
I'm excited about all of that. Tom, where would they find us if they were looking for us?
Well, they can find us at webinartalkshow.com. They can also go to Facebook and see all the past episodes right there. They can also find them on YouTube. But if they go to webinartalkshow.live, that's going to take them right to that Facebook page where all of these videos, back to number 1, are all there.
Back to number 1. It's true. Stacey, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks so much.
You too. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Take care.